Have you ever noticed how the word yes can slip out of your mouth before your mind even understands what it agreed to? It happens quietly, almost gently. A friend asks you for a favor when you're already exhausted, and you feel the weight in your chest, the quiet plea for rest, but your lips shape a yes anyway. A co-worker pushes their unfinished task onto your desk, smiling like it's nothing. A family member nudges you into an emotional storm you didn't choose, and you stand there, watching yourself agree, even as something deep inside whispers, "I don't want this." It leaves a strange heaviness, a feeling that is hard to explain, because the moment passes quickly, but the discomfort lingers long after. You replay it later in the shower, in traffic, lying awake at night. You wonder why you didn't simply say no. It seems like such a small thing, 2 letters, a breath, a boundary, and yet something inside you hesitated, something old, something familiar. There is a story here, not just in what you said, but in why you said it. You tell yourself it was kindness, that you didn't want to upset anyone, that it was easier this way. But beneath that explanation lies a deeper truth, one the mind doesn't easily admit. The truth is that your yes was not a decision, it was a reflex, a survival instinct shaped long before adulthood arrived. A pattern woven into the nervous system, a memory stored not in words, but in the body. Psychologists call this compliance conditioning a learned response, where the fear of emotional disconnection overrides your personal desires. The brain learns early that belonging is safety and rejection is danger. So, you say yes, not because you want to, but because somewhere inside, a younger version of you is still trying to avoid being left behind. But persuasion, the force that shapes your yes, is not random. It has a structure, a rhythm, a psychology that operates beneath awareness. And the world is full of people who understand how to trigger that reflex gently, subtly, sometimes without even realizing they're doing it. The co-worker who phrases the favor as gratitude in advance. The friend who sighs just enough to awaken your guilt. The family member who looks at you in that way that says, "If you loved me, you'd do this." You were never taught how to resist persuasion, only how to surrender to it. But this is where things begin to change. Because by the end of this video, you will understand the architecture of yes, where it comes from, how it controls you, and how to reclaim the part of you that was never meant to be silent. Do you remember the first time you hid your true feelings just to keep the peace? You were small then, small enough that the world towered over you, and the people you depended on felt like gods. Love was not just affection, it was survival. Approval meant warmth, safety, belonging. Disapproval meant cold distance, raised voices, or the silent withdrawal that feels worse than anger. And so, without realizing it, you learn to shape yourself to fit the room. Imagine a child standing in a quiet hallway, holding a toy they didn't actually want to give up. But the adult in the room smiles in that expectant way, the kind of smile that says, "Be good." The child feels that familiar tightening in the chest, the fear of disappointing someone whose love feels necessary to exist. And so they hand the toy over, not because they want to, but because something inside whispers, "If they're happy, I am safe." This is how it begins, not with words, but with silence. Not with rules, but with emotional weather patterns. If you were praised when you were agreeable, you learned to smile. If you were scolded or ignored when you protested, you learned to swallow your no. You didn't choose this, you adapted to it. Psychologists call this attachment imprinting, the shaping of the nervous system in response to early relational experience. the child learns to scan others' moods before expressing their own. They become hyper-aware of tone, tension, the shift in someone's breathing. This vigilance looks like empathy, but often it is fear wearing kindness as a mask. You learn to apologize for things that weren't your fault. You learn to laugh at jokes that stung. You learn to offer help even when you were tired. Each act felt small, even noble, but slowly the self inside you dimmed, not extinguished, just quiet, waiting for a moment when it would finally be allowed to speak. But the moment never came. Because once you learn that love is conditional, that being accepted requires performance, you carry that lesson forward, even when the original stage is long gone. The child who kept the peace to avoid losing love grows into the adult who cannot say no, because the body still remembers the cost of disobedience. And so, you keep saying yes. Not because you are weak, but because once, a long time ago, yes was how you survived. The story only deepens from here, because what begins as survival can become a cage you no longer realize you are inside. There comes a point in your life when you begin to realize that you are performing, not on a stage, not for an audience, but in every room you enter. You smile when you don't feel joy. You nod when your heart whispers no. You say, "It's fine," while something inside you quietly collapses. And what once began as survival in childhood becomes habit in adulthood, a mask so familiar you forget it's even there. You become the reliable one, the understanding one, the one who listens more than they speak, who absorbs more than they release. Your kindness becomes a currency, traded for peace, connection, and the illusion of harmony. People thank you for being so helpful, so patient, so easy to be around. They notice the softness in your voice, the way you never push back, the way you always seem willing, but they do not see the weight beneath your ribs. You agree to plans you don't want to be part of. You take on favors, even when your days are already overflowing. You stay in relationships long after your heart has gone quiet. You become the emotional caretaker, the one who holds others together while slowly coming undone yourself. On the outside, you look composed. Inside, resentment flickers like a small flame, one you keep smothered before it grows too bright, because you've learned that your needs are an inconvenience. There is a loneliness in that kind of living, a loneliness that is difficult to name. It is not the absence of people, it is the absence of yourself in your own life. Over time, your identity begins to erode, slowly, quietly, like water wearing down stone. You forget what you enjoy, what you desire, what you believe. The world sees a gentle person, but what it does not see is the exhaustion, the quiet ache of constantly bending so others never have to. And here, the body speaks when the mouth cannot. Fatigue settles into your bones. Anxiety flickers beneath your skin. Your chest tightens at every new request. The body says no in all the ways you were never allowed to. The nervous system remembers what you tried to forget. This mask, this performance, is not accidental. It is guided by the mind's shortcuts, patterns shaped by years of emotional conditioning. The brain, wired to avoid conflict and seek belonging, pushes you toward agreement before you even realize what you're agreeing to. You are not weak. You are not naive. You are responding exactly how your past taught you to survive. But survival strategies are not meant to last forever. And now, the question becomes, what happens when the pattern begins to break? Why does the word yes come so easily, even when every part of you is silently begging to refuse? The answer is older than language, older than culture, older than the person you think you are. It is written into the nervous system, a survival blueprint your ancestors depended on. Humans did not evolve alone. You come from villages, tribes, close circles of interdependence. To be rejected once meant to be left without protection, without fire, without food. The brain still remembers this ancient truth. Belonging is life, and separation is danger. So your mind developed shortcuts, automatic rules to maintain harmony without requiring conscious thought. Robert Cialdini, one of the leading researchers on persuasion, called these shortcuts universal principles. But beneath the academic language, they are emotional instincts. When someone gives to you, your body urges you to give back reciprocity. It is not politeness. It is the fear of imbalance, the terror of owing. Because once upon a time, owing the wrong person meant losing access to the group. When someone likes you, you trust them more liking. Because once, trust was not a luxury. It was how you ensured survival in the dark. When someone seems confident or powerful, your mind leans in their direction for authority. Because the tribe needed leaders to prevent chaos, and questioning the wrong leader at the wrong time could cost your life. When many people agree on something, you feel pulled to follow social proof because standing alone on the savannah was a death sentence. And when you've said yes once, you are more likely to say yes again. Consistency. Because changing your stance used to signal unpredictability, and unpredictability could exile you. Your brain is not weak. It is efficient. It avoids conflict not because you lack courage, but because human beings were shaped to avoid isolation. The nervous system is constantly measuring safety, not in logic, but in connection. So when you say yes, even when you don't want to, it is your biology whispering, stay close, don't disrupt the bond, don't risk being alone. But survival instincts do not always translate into a healthy life. There is a quiet tragedy here. The very patterns designed to protect you can become the chains that hold you captive. In a world where saying no longer threatens your life, your brain still behaves as if it does. And this is where persuasion becomes personal, not something happening to you, but something happening within you. Sometimes, the cage is not the world outside, but the instincts inside your own skin. There is a moment quiet, nearly imperceptible, when your yes stops being an act of kindness and becomes an act of self-abandonment. You feel it not in your voice, but in your chest, like a slow tightening. On the outside, you are composed, agreeable, warm, but inside, something small and honest begins to wilt. You smile, you nod, you reassure, and no one sees the fracture forming beneath the surface. It feels like watering everyone else's garden while your own slowly dies. You give your time, your energy, your emotional presence until your days begin to blur together. You cancel your plans to fit someone else's needs. You silence your exhaustion to avoid disappointing others. You hold your pain like a secret you're not sure you're allowed to feel. And at first, it doesn't look like harm. It even feels noble, like you're being a good person, a loyal friend, a dependable partner. But the cost begins to echo. You start to feel a quiet resentment not toward others, but toward yourself. Resentment for the words you didn't say, for the rest you didn't take, for the boundaries you never drew. The resentment builds slowly, like rising water, until suddenly you are drowning in a life full of obligations you never consciously chose. And then comes the self-loathing, the thought that whispers, why can't I just say no? This is where the shadow of yes reveals itself. The tragedy is not that others take advantage of you. It is that you learned to take advantage of yourself. People pleasers are not weak. They are compassionate. They have the ability to feel others deeply, perhaps too deeply. They can sense disappointment before it arrives, conflict before it forms, rejection before it speaks. And so they bend, they soften, they yield. But every time you abandon your own needs to protect someone else's comfort, a part of you watches and remembers. The inner self learns that its voice does not matter. And nothing is more painful than being alive and unseen, not by others, but by yourself. This is the quiet wound that never appears in stories or conversations. The wound of disappearing while still being physically present. A ghost in your own life. And yet, you continue. Because somewhere deep inside, you were taught that saying no is selfish, unkind, unloving, that boundaries are a betrayal. Which brings us to the real question. Where did you learn that your own needs were something to apologize for? The answer is not simple, and it is not yours alone. Have you ever noticed how the world praises you when you put yourself last? How people call you kind when you stay quiet, gentle when you suppress your frustration, such a good person when you say yes even as your heart sinks. From childhood, you were taught that goodness looks like obedience, like softness without resistance, but no one told you the cost. You grew up in a culture that worships the idea of self-sacrifice. Films, stories, family sayings, religious lessons, they all echo the same message. A good person gives, a good person endures, a good person doesn't make others uncomfortable. And so, you learned early that your value was not in who you are, but in how well you serve the needs of others. Think of the child who is told to share, not because they want to, but because good children don't say no. Think of the teenager who swallows their anger because talking back is disrespect. Think of the adult who smiles politely while something inside them grows tired, heavy, unseen. You were trained to be agreeable. Most societies reward compliance because compliant people are easier to manage. Workplaces celebrate the employee who never refuses. Families lean on the one who never says, "I can't do this anymore." Friend groups rely on the quiet one who absorbs everyone else's chaos. And the world applauds them, even as it quietly drains them. A good person says yes. A difficult person has boundaries. That's the myth. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if real goodness is not found in silence, but in honesty? What if integrity means telling the truth of your limits? What if kindness without self-respect is not kindness at all, just exhaustion dressed as virtue? There is something tragic in how society teaches you to betray yourself and then praises you for the betrayal. It tells you that discomfort must always be avoided, that conflict is inherently bad, that your needs are less important than the comfort of others, and so you shrink, you soften, you disappear. You become easy to love, but impossible to truly know. And here is the haunting part. The people who benefit from your compliance will never ask if you're okay. They won't ask if you're tired, overwhelmed, or breaking under the weight of your yes, because your silence makes their lives easier, and society calls that goodness. But the emotional cost of this obedience is enormous, because eventually you realize the world taught you how to please, but never taught you how to live. There comes a point where the exhaustion stops being physical and becomes something heavier, something that settles behind your ribs and stays there. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because you have spent years holding up a version of yourself that the world finds convenient. You become fluent in the language of quiet endurance. You learn to smile when your chest feels hollow. You learn to say, "It's okay," even when it isn't. And slowly, the weight of all the unsaid words begins to take its toll. It's a kind of burnout that doesn't look dramatic. It's not flames or collapse. It's a gradual thinning of the soul. It's the feeling of being drained by conversations, where you listen but are never heard. It's the ache of giving emotional support without receiving any. It's the numbness that comes when your needs are buried so deeply that even you can no longer feel them clearly. The stress is constant, not loud, not sudden, but an ongoing internal conflict. A war between the part of you that wants to rest and the part that is terrified of disappointing others. Your nervous system stays on alert, scanning every interaction for signs of disapproval, rejection, or conflict. And your body carries the consequences: tension in the jaw, tightness in the chest, headaches that seem to have no cause. Your body says no loudly, even when your voice cannot. And then there is the loneliness, the quiet, bitter kind, that sits with you in crowded rooms. People may love you, they may admire you, they may even call you their closest friend, but they are loving the version of you that never needed anything, the version that is always okay, the version that doesn't exist. There is nothing more painful than being surrounded by love, yet feeling completely unseen. Because how can anyone see you when you have worked so hard to hide the parts of yourself that are real? You silenced your desires to be agreeable. You softened your voice to avoid tension. You erased your boundaries to maintain peace. And in doing so, you slowly erased yourself. But here is where the story shifts. Not with anger, not with rebellion, but with a quiet realization. You are allowed to disappoint people. Healing begins when you stop sacrificing your inner world to maintain the comfort of others. When you begin to understand that your needs are not inconveniences. When you start to reclaim the voice that once whispered no before you learned to silence it. The next step is not dramatic. It is simply this: the courage to let yourself exist. So how do you begin to reclaim yourself? How do you learn to say no when your entire life has been shaped by the fear of what will happen if you do? The answer is not force or rebellion or sudden walls. It begins quietly the same way the pattern began, but this time the quiet moves in your favor. Imagine a moment where someone asks something of you. It could be small a favor, a conversation when you're tired, a responsibility you didn't ask for. Feel the familiar reflex rising, the automatic yes, the conditioned agreement, the instinct to protect their comfort before considering your own. But this time, instead of answering instantly, you pause, just one breath, just a moment. A simple sentence can save you. Let me think about it. It is soft, it is gentle, but it gives you space to check in with yourself before abandoning yourself. This is what psychologists call intercepting the automatic response. You are teaching your nervous system that it does not have to rush into survival mode when there is no real danger. Then you start small, tiny boundaries, micro boundaries. They may seem insignificant, but they are tectonic shifts inside you, saying, I actually can't today. Saying, I'm not available right now. Saying, I need some time to myself. It will feel uncomfortable at first, almost like breaking a rule. Your chest might tighten. Your heart may race. That is not guilt, it is simply your nervous system learning that your needs are not threats, because the truth is, discomfort is not danger. You are rewiring the emotional memory that once tied refusal to abandonment. You are showing your inner child, the one who learned to please to survive, that you are safe now. And as you practice, something begins to happen. Your identity, the one you buried to keep others comfortable, begins to return. You start to remember what you enjoy, what you value, what you believe. You begin to feel the subtle warmth of self-respect, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet, steady knowing. And you learn a truth that changes everything. You do not need to become cold to protect yourself. You only need to become whole. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. And doors can open, but only when you choose to open them. You are not rejecting others when you say no. You are simply returning to yourself. And now, with your voice slowly returning, we arrive at the final understanding, the one that lingers long after the words are gone. There is a moment in every life where you realize that your voice was never meant to be an echo. You were not born simply to reflect what others wanted, or to shape yourself into a shape that fits their expectations. You were born with a spine, a pulse, a self, something whole, something living. And yet, somewhere along the way, you learned to trade your truth for acceptance, to offer yes as a peace offering, to hand yourself away in small pieces for the comfort of others. But a yes that costs you your peace is not generosity, it is surrender. A yes that silences your truth is not kindness, it is self-erasure. If your yes is to have meaning, if it is to be an expression of love, commitment, connection, then it must be chosen freely. It cannot be the product of fear. It cannot be the reflex born of old wounds. It cannot be the survival response of a heart that believes it must earn its right to exist. Saying no is not rejection. Saying no is clarity. Think of a person who moves through life without boundaries. They are pulled like a leaf in the wind, not living, but being carried. Their life becomes a series of obligations, reactions, and silent compromises. Their timeline no longer feels like their own because it isn't. Now imagine someone who knows themselves, someone who knows the shape of their own inner landscape, their values, their limits, their needs. When they say yes, it is warm, it is real, it is grounded, because it comes from a place that is alive, intact, whole. This is the quiet power of no. It restores the weight to your yes. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first. You will feel the echoes of old fears, the fear of disappointing someone, of being seen as selfish, of being misunderstood. But every act of self-respect begins with discomfort. Growth always arrives disguised as unease. You are learning to return to yourself, to inhabit your life from the inside rather than observing it from the outside, to speak from truth rather than fear. Your voice is not meant to be small. Your presence is not meant to disappear into the needs of others. Your life does not belong to those who demand your compliance. It belongs to the part of you that has been waiting patiently to be seen. And so we end here with the truth you have always known but perhaps forgotten. Your life does not begin when others approve of you. It begins when you approve of yourself.